Everybody, I appreciate your patience. We have some people stuck in traffic, apparently, so we're going to wait a few minutes. If we're ready, I think we're about 5 minutes past time, but as I mentioned, there's apparently significant interstate gridlock. So we may have a few people wander in, but I thought we might as well go ahead and get started. Want to recognize that our Kathy Hamilton, Commissioner Hamilton's here, and we think Jerry Askew is on his way as well, so he will likely come in and actually sit here. The first thing is the approval of the minutes. You got them for your review. There's one number in the minutes that we need to correct. It's residential electric customers is 190,000 rather than 170, so that correction will be made if you will note that, if that's okay. Are there any other items in the minutes anybody found wanting, for lack of a better word, need to change? Okay, good. Okay, today's meeting agenda is to continue our rate discussion, and Kent has asked to share a presentation, which you can see is beginning on the board. So what we want to do is have Kent's presentation, and then we'll move to a little more structured discussion than we have had. I just want to make extra sure that everybody has an opportunity to weigh in and ask questions in a little more structured manner. I think it's been good to have it free form, but I think some folks have not had the opportunity to participate maybe as much as they would like, and we would like all of you to. So with that in mind, Kent, if you would like to take the floor and give us the benefit of your presentation, we appreciate it.
All right. I hope it has benefit. There's a couple of reasons why I was motivated to present this, and one obvious one was that I think it really responds to the conversation and the differences of opinion that we've had already. And another one is just a personal thing, which again and again when I advocate for things around the city and the state, I hear, well, we're not LA, or, you know, or if it doesn't happen in Tennessee, it doesn't really happen at all. And I think that it's very important, especially if we're dealing with climate issues, to look everywhere, to really consider all the best ideas that we can find in any place. And I think this is a pretty good idea. It certainly responded to a lot of the issues that we have here. So let's start right out. This is a 2015 rate case, and it responded to a number of pressures, both local and statewide, that LADWP had to deal with. They had to. Necessity forced them to create a new rate structure that would respond to those pressures. So let's see. Oh, good. What were the pressures? Well, first one came from the state. California had a renewable portfolio standard, an RPS, which we don't have here, but an RPS means a percentage of the delivered electricity to customers has to contain a certain number of renewables, and that by a certain date. So in this case, it was established first in 2002 by SB 1078 with the requirement that 20% of energy retail sales must be served by renewables by 2017. Now we'll see later that they beat that deadline by 7 years. So they got there by 2010. So in 2015, they gave them another deadline and said 50% by 2030. Now there's even more to it than that, but let's for now point out that LADWP was under serious pressure from the state to have a lot more renewables. And once they achieved the deadline and were successful, then they just moved the goalposts and say you got to make more. So the utilities executives and engineers were sweating a bit. And on top of that, the city of LA, because of advocacy from crazy people like me, passed a requirement that LA get completely off coal by 2025. Now, we had actually wanted them to do it by 2020, and they hemmed and hawed and argued and calculated, and they said, we can't do it, but we can do it by 2025. So we met and huddled up and said, 2025, that's a total cop-out. We can't, what the hell, it's an agreement, let's go for it. So we accepted it, and then they agreed with it, and in 2013, there was a big meeting in front of the LADWP building with Al Gore and a bunch of environmental leaders there cheering it on, and passed in 2013. But that put an initial pressure on the utility. They had to replace 46% of LA's electricity because it was dependent on two gigantically polluting coal-fired plants, one in Arizona, one in Utah. They had to get off of those, and they had a mere decade in which to do it. So they had to make a lot more renewables, and they had to get off of coal. And the third thing is low-income communities, which in Los Angeles are very well organized, were pressuring them not to unduly burden poor people with a rate increase. And they needed to get a lot more money. And where are they going to get the money? Well, from rates. So that's the pickle they were in. So let's see what they did about it. The 2015 rate case was the response to the pressures. They had to raise a large amount from their ratepayers while assuaging the concerns of very well-organized residents in low-income neighborhoods. The tiered rate structure that we'll explore, it wasn't enough to satisfy those residents. Those residents also wanted to help them, they wanted help reducing their own energy consumption. They wanted to raise the energy efficiency budget of the utility by 50%. Well, if the utility raises the energy efficiency budget, well, that's even more money. So they got to put in renewable energy, they got to get off coal, they got to keep the rates low, and they got to spend money on energy efficiency upgrades for low-income people, but also middle and high-income people, because they had rebates and incentives for, heat pump HVAC units and stuff like that. Whew. So that would require them to bring in a lot of money. So just like in Tennessee, the laws governing utility rates would not allow them to give a special rate to poor people. I'm poor, bring down my utility rates, I'm suffering. Well, too bad, we can't do it. So this very successful program of low-income energy efficiency, by the way, they really did a great job with it, just like we do here. By the way, KUB, in case you don't know, does a fantastic job on energy efficiency upgrades, and they have record people who roughly get about 30% reduction on their utility bills, if I'm not incorrect. So we could do it just as good as they could do it. Just because they're LA, we don't need to take a back seat to them. But that was what got poor people on the side. That was part of the advocacy I did in LA, was to go into low-income communities, work with the leaders there, and explain to people why poor people should vote for a rate increase. And I had no idea whether or not I'd be successful at it, but I and other people, we actually succeeded, and poor people went en masse, in large numbers, to the Department of Water and Power and said, yeah, do the rate increase, but don't you cop out on those, that 50% increase in the weatherization and energy efficiency budget. That was important to them. What happened? What have I done? Liz! Did I turn it off? I thought I pressed. Okay, wait. Okay, so keep in mind, when energy efficiency, and this is a really aggressive energy efficiency program, they propose to reduce LA's total electricity consumption by 15% in 5 years. That's 3% a year. And that's at the upper end of what efficiency programs are generally expected to do. 1% is average, I think, if I'm not mistaken about that. So if they're successful in reducing energy consumption by 15%, then they're also going to reduce their income from usage fees by 15%. So they're putting money into reducing their own income. And so, again, you can imagine the pressure they're under. So what they did, just like we've seen explained by Mike Bolin in his presentation, they have a fixed fee in LA. And the purpose of the fixed fee is just like it is here, that if energy efficiency reduces income from usage fees, that income has to be made up from somewhere else. And in the case of LA, we've seen that they've got a whole lot of fixed costs that don't directly depend on the amount people consume, but those costs are important anyway. They still have to replace telephone poles and transformers, but also they've got to put up a whole lot of solar panels and windmills, and they've got to do a lot of energy efficiency upgrades. And they'll have those costs no matter how much or how little electricity people use. So, and they also, this is another thing, they have an expanding net metering system. Now, net metering is when you basically give an incentive for people to put solar panels on their roofs. We don't really have that here in Tennessee. It was explained to me by a lawyer. It's not illegal. It's just against TVA policy. We could get it if we could, twist their arms enough. But anyway, they have that in LA, and that also provides a premium to people who put electricity back into the grid from their rooftop solar panels, another cost to the utility. In addition to the vast system of utility scale renewable resources. Increasing fixed costs, that's what they face. But to avoid unduly burdening LA's low-income communities, they created a tiered fixed fee, the amount based on consumption, not income. Let's see how it works. Oh, good. Proposed changes. They propose to implement a tiered fixed charge for residential customers. Now, I hope everybody has been paying attention to all the previous presentations, because the difference between the basic charge on our bills and the variable rate charge is something that we're dealing with here. So instead of having one basic charge on the bill, there's a tiered system of chargers. You can be in tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3. Now, if you stay in tier 1, your fixed fee will be really, really low. If you slip into tier 2, it'll be moderately high. And if you slip into tier 3, at least at the end of 5 years, you're going to get squeezed. It's a very high rate. We'll see exactly what those rates are, but the rate is based on the maximum usage in the previous year. Now, the point of this is that the utility has to maintain the grid to a capacity that will provide for your maximum use. So if you jack up your electricity use to a really high level, they've got to be ready to serve that, even if most of the rest of the time you don't use that much electricity. You don't want the grid to collapse when everybody is suddenly using a high level of electricity, like if there's suddenly a 115-degree day or something. So they look at your past year, and they take your maximum month, and that sets your tier 1, 2, or 3. As more customers generate a portion of their own energy needs, like with rooftop solar panels, a utility's financial survival requires rate design mechanisms to change to ensure that all the customers continue to contribute to the basic fixed costs of providing electric service. So if somebody's really smart and they put a lot of solar panels on their roof and they're providing all or more of their own needs. My friend David in Marina Del Rey in California, I think his utility bill, the one he showed me, was like $3.85. Well, if the utility has a lot of people that are paying $3.85 for their use of electricity, then the grid still costs money, so they have to find a way to address that. Now, okay, yeah, let's go to the next one. There's an additional complexity here that we should understand. But anyway, here are the monthly tiered fixed charges. Now remember, there's going to be tiered rates as well, but these are just the fixed fees, and damn, that's small. Can we magnify that at all? Can everybody see that? I mean, when I cough it up on my computer, I can magnify it a little bit, but well, let me do that, and so I'll just tell you what it says. Can you see it okay? Oh, good, okay, yeah. Look at that, that's great. So, everybody bears some of the distribution infrastructure costs. Now remember, if your usage is low, you're putting less strain on the grid. The transformers and insulators and wires and switches don't get heated up as much by your usage as they do by somebody whose usage is higher. So if you use a small amount of electricity in the first year, your fixed fee is 55 cents. Quite a bit lower than the fixed fee we pay here. But don't worry, it's going to go up, because just like, and again, Mike explained this to us, you don't want to slap people with a sudden shocking change in their utility bills. You want the change to blend in slowly. So that's what they're doing here. So put yourself in the position of a low usage customer who can keep themselves in tier 1. And I think the lid on that is 350 kilowatt hours. And that's a pretty low amount. I think in LA the average now is 410, so it would be lower than average. But if you stay within that, Then your 55 cents in 2015 would become, was that 85, $1.30, 175, and it goes all the way up to $2.30 at the end of 5 years. So by 2020, you have a $2.30 fixed fee. Now, if you go and your usage from the previous year puts you into tier 2, then you'll start at $2, not 55 cents. And by the end of the 5-year period, your fixed fee will be up to $7.90. If you're a really high usage customer, even for 1 month in the previous year, then your fixed fee starts out at $6, and it ends up $22.70. $22.70 is a little bit higher than what we pay on the fixed charge here. So our fixed charge in Knoxville is really consistent with the highest usage pattern in LA. So try and keep that stuff in mind. And also, one other thing to notice about this is that the increase in the fixed charges over the 5 years is fairly modest for the low usage customer, the blue pattern there. There's not that much of an increase. But for the high usage, the green bars, that shoots up to quite a high amount. Now, the purpose of this is not just to fairly charge people based on the burden they put on the grid, but also to incentivize conservation and efficiency. That's what, there's an environmental as well as a social justice purpose to the rate structure. And when I talked to LADWP, they emphasized that that was very important to them, and they were receiving quite a bit of pressure both from the local city council as well as from organized advocates in town.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So if somebody was in tier 1, their usage went up, they went to tier 2, are they locked into that progression for 5 years, or if they reduce their usage, can they drop back?
No, they can drop back. Yeah, they can drop back. So they'll change. It's based on the previous year. So you're reassigned your fixed fee each year.
Do you start at the top and then come back down, you start at the bottom to go up when you get reassigned?
It's your last 12, the highest last 12 months.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, but would you
So
start,
you're stuck in it for that 12 months, and then they look back to the previous year.
You go back down.
That's
I got
that.
that, but when you go back to that, do you start at 55 cents, or you start at 7, or you start at 230 because you already peaked out 1 year?
You start at whatever your last highest 12 months was.
And whatever that rate is that year.
Yes.
Yeah, it just depends on the fiscal.
That's right.
year.
That's right.
That's
So
not the number of years you have at that rate, that's just in that year, what the rate happens at.
well, for example, what if you got a hole in your roof and you're a really high energy consumer and you have to pay that high fixed fee in the first year, and you go, damn, I got to get this fixed. I got to call those energy efficiency upgrade people and get someone down here. They fix the hole in your roof, you reduce your energy consumption, you will reduce your fixed fee.
But when you go back to tier 1, in that first year you're back in tier 1, do you start at 55 cents? Or do you start at 230? That's what I'm asking.
No, it changes year. So that was just the bottom in that fiscal year 2015-16. So if you went.
Oh, well, okay, I'm
Yeah,
with you
so
now.
it-
I see where
it
I'm
changes.
misunderstanding, okay.
Are you clear? Is
If it
that
was
clear?
at the
to-
fifth year, it'd be 230.
Yeah,
That's right.
I do.
That's right. That's
not
right.
a progression, that's
Yeah,
just progression of
that's
the
right,
base
that's
rate.
right. If you engage in an energy efficiency upgrade or a behavioral change and become more conserving in your electricity, you will lower that fixed fee. That's the point.
Hey, Ken,
Yeah.
I got a question about, so when this happened in 2015, how much weatherization was being promised again by LA?
How much
upgrades?
weatherization? There was, that's a good question, Hasib. They had a 50% increase in the budget. How much was that? I'm sorry, I didn't bring
No, it's
that
okay.
information with me. But the point of it was that it worked. And David and George, the guys in LA that I spoke to, I spent like a half an hour in a Zoom meeting saying, now make sure I got this right, you guys, because I don't want to misrepresent you. But they explained that between 2011 and 2020, there was roughly an 18 or 19% reduction in average energy usage. So in 2011, the average Angelino used 500 kilowatt hours of electricity, and it was 410 at the end of that period of time. That was energy efficiency upgrades and general education about behavior modification and
Totally
conservation.
not debating that. That's awesome because it's an interesting test case for modifying customer behavior. The thing that I'm sort of picking up on, which I think it's worthwhile at least note, this might increase pressure on trying to get the LDAP, I think, or the LIHEAP? LIHEAP program funded even more.
Yes.
Right? Because we want to make efficiency, because all the people that have inefficient homes for so many different reasons, if they can't feel like they can't get the funding to fix it.
Excellent point. I mean, I think we should have a whole session like this on energy efficiency upgrades and what to do. And there are funding opportunities available right now. I'm not totally up on all we can do, but I think we can do a lot more.
So the last part of that was that I'm sure that had to put a similar pressure on LA. So do you know, and it's okay if not, but do you know anecdotally if LA was able to find more money for or something like LIHEAP or?
No, they have LIHEAP in LA.
Okay.
That's a national program, and they use it.
Okay.
They also put in their own utility money.
Cool.
And it was a justified expenditure because they had that RPS. And if you reduce your total consumption, if you're heavily fossil fuel based, but you reduce your total consumption, then even with the same amount of renewables, the percentage actually grows.
I wanted to highlight that. Cool.
Does it consider family size? So let's say I had 6 girls.
Yeah, this is residential, so we're not considering commercial or industrial.
I'm talking about residential.
Right.
I got 6 girls in my household versus a single citizen.
Right,
So the usage is obviously going to be different.
yeah,
Yeah. So are they penalized because of 6 girls in the house?
yeah. How many girls? Oh, 6? Yep, your penalty for that. Well, I mean, I think basically, yes, because this is a general program that everybody, so if you can convince, I'm telling you, I've got a woman I pay court to in Europe, and when I visit her, her teenage daughters are constantly nagging me to turn off the lights after I leave a room. So people in Europe have been getting educated about energy efficiency ever since the oil embargo period of the 70s. It's in there. You know, they'll complain if I don't shift the car soon enough. I mean, they really know energy efficiency. Americans are not energy efficiency educated. We're not conservation-minded people. So, but teenage girls are good at it. Once they get into it, they're obsessed. And they'll harass their parents
Shorten
about
their
it.
showers.
What's that?
They'll shorten their hot showers.
Yeah, short showers, everything. Yeah. What?
So like you said, your tier is based on your previous 12 months. Where does a new user fall within? So if I,
Yeah, good. I don't know. Probably. I mean, they might just be generous and assume that it's tier 1, but I don't really know. Yeah, I don't have that. It's a good question.
You know, if I move from one house to the next,
Well, yeah,
behavior follow, or is it efficiency of each of the houses?
yeah. Well, I think a lot of it be efficiency. I mean, I've done energy efficiency on both houses that I lived in over the past decade, and boy, it's made a lot of difference in the bill. It really works.
But your change would come in the next month after you hit that peak.
Yeah, that's,
It's immediate, right? No
Well,
matter
the-
where you started.
So it's the first month? that you moved in?
I don't know, because you're asking about a new customer, and I
assuming it
gotta
works
plead
like-
ignorance. I really
I'm
don't.
assuming it works like contract demand here, so that's where I was at.
Yeah, well, that could be. Anyway, let me proceed, because they're not just tiered fixed fees, they're also tiered rates, so I think we're getting to that now. Yeah, well, this is just the explanation of the benefits: continuity and reliability, encouraging efficiency and conservation, better matching of cost recovery and cost causation. So this is an important thing for just basically fairness. If you use more electricity, then the utility has to spend more money keeping the grid fitted up to serve your needs. Movement toward matching the level of fixed and variable costs with revenue from fixed and usage-based rate elements. So they're trying to match things up and make sure that no charges and no expenses are disproportionate. Minimizing the percentage rate increase for low usage customers or eliminating the impact on low usage customers as the fixed charge is not expected to exceed the current minimum usage charge. And that's just a little diversion there. They had a minimum usage charge. If you went on vacation and locked up your house, then there would be a charge on your bill because they got to maintain the grid whether you're actually using stuff or not. So this fixed fee now replaces that previous minimum usage charge. And again, this is all quoted from the material I've sent everybody. Okay, so the rates are tiered just like the fixed fees are tiered. And again, the incentive behind it is the same: conservation, efficiency, and social justice. It encourages energy conservation. In order to send the proper conservation price signals to customers, electricity rates increase as consumption increases. This will take a little bit of explanation, but let me point out the conservation price signals is exactly what Dr. Smith and Maggie Schober were talking about in their presentations over the last couple of weeks. That they're trying to get a rate structure that properly reflects the signals that encourage people to use less. If we can use efficiency and conservation, this is a great benefit for climate change goals. And it also is consistent with the marginal costs to serve those customers. Now that phrase marginal cost is important because, as they emphasized in their study, the marginal cost of service study is the one that's most highly approved by utilities and utility scholars around the country. So the proposed rate design allocates more of the rate increase to customers that consume the highest levels of electricity, and customers at lower consumption levels receive lower relative rate increases. Now remember, the rate increases are over 5 years. So again, we're trying to emphasize the gradual introduction of something so people aren't slapped upside the head with a big increase in their bills. The last thing elaborates what that means. Over 5 years, the increases proposed for each tier are 2.4% for tier 1. So that means you'll pay a 2.4% higher rate in 2020 than in 2015. If you make it into tier 2, though, your increase will be 7.5% over that same 5-year period. And if you go into tier 3, I made a mistake. 2.4% for tier 1, 5.1% for tier 2, 7.5% for tier 3. So your rate increase will be much higher in tier 3 than in tier 1. The amount above what you paid 5 years before. I'm seeing blank facial expression. No, it's over the 5-year period. So in 2020, if you're in tier 1, you'll pay 2.4% more in your rates than you did back in 2015. If you make it into tier 3, you'll pay 7.5% more than you did back in 2015. How you doing?
So many changes can happen in a 5-year period. And
Well, that's right. That's right. And if those
Yeah.
changes happen, then the amount of difference would be different. If you, in the middle of the 5-year period, get yourself an energy efficiency upgrade and lower your consumption level, then you would fall back into a lower rate as well.
Did the utility have the option to increase rates as they went through that 5 years?
No, this was a commitment. Now, subsequently, in 2021 and 22, they've changed the amount of the rates, but the structure of the system has remained in place. That is to say, tiered rates and tiered fixed fees have stayed.
Is that hard for KUB to budget, seeing all these shifting?
There are a few utilities, TVA service territory that has tiered rates rates as well.
Three of them.
Nashville would be one of them. They have tiered rates. And really, it's just tiered service charges.
Yeah, not the rate.
Not the rates themselves, because rates themselves are a whole lot of TVA pass-through. So it doesn't necessarily change based upon your usage. But they do change their customer charge. I think it starts at, I don't have somebody here to tell me exactly, but it's
Yeah,
somewhere
it's on
around
their website.
$16.
They've got 4 tiers. I'm sorry. It's a little under $16, and it goes up to about 22. Then it goes to about 27, and then it goes to 37. Wow. 37, you're using like 4,000 kilowatt. It's a lot. hours.
Yeah.
But there are some,
But there are tiered,
but there are tiers, basically.
Yeah.
so, and similar to LA, they look back the previous 12 months, and whatever your highest usage was in the previous 12 months sets what your basic service charge is, and it just changes every single month. And of course, what happens is then one month or next month, your bill goes like this based upon your previous 12 months. There's, you can jump from $16 to $29 or whatever in a single month, or back, depending on your usage patterns. So there's a lot of churn a little bit in bills as a result of this. But yeah,
The short answer to your question is you can be done.
It can,
It's
certainly.
just a lot more complicated maybe for the customer, but
Yes,
but it can be done.
That's right.
So that's more of a rolling 12 months, whereas this one is a fiscal year, 12 months.
I believe
Is
it's
that-
fiscal year, but again, and I've talked to people at LA, and I can follow up and relay your questions, because I don't think I can't answer them as comprehensively as those guys can, but and the point of this is to illustrate a rate and that responds.
Well,
They're no better than we are. They're not a bunch of granola gobbling environmentalists. They're utility engineers, and they are all across the political spectrum, but the law said they got to do it. So they went, oh, okay, let's figure it out.
Well, the other thing that the tier does, that you mentioned, is the goal of theirs, is they're trying to incent less use.
Yes,
They're purposefully having higher rates to incent people to use less.
yeah, that's exactly right.
And the other thing they were trying to incent as well is they were trying to incent people to add solar to their houses.
Yes,
So their rate design is a response to a lot of different pressures.
Yeah.
That they were trying to send signals, put solar on your house and use less. And they were, just like gasoline's higher now, so it's incenting people to do EVs, right? That's what it's doing. You raise our rates, make it higher, people are gonna be saying, I'm gonna go get solar, or I'm gonna do energy. I mean, it's the same sort of thing.
Yeah.
And clearly that's a tool a person could utilize. Now, people that don't have the money to go do energy efficiency, or the money to put on solar, what their responsibility, their responses to higher rates is different than people that have money that can make responses.
exactly. Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's zero in on it here. I want to talk about the rate design as well as the fee design. Yeah, I'm sorry, Bill.
One thing that's intriguing me is the forced summer in the paren there.
Oh, yeah, this is an additional complexity for Angelenos that I don't know that it's particularly relevant to us here in Knoxville. Now, people in Knoxville, I mean, it gets hot here in Knoxville just like it does there, so there is some additional utility consumption in summer, but I think what I would encourage us to do is grasp this all without reference to any special summer thing. And as you'll see, when I'm going to present a slide that gives you the whole chart of everything all together. But I think that we should look at it without making any special allowance for summer, because I doubt that we need to, although people smarter than me might say we do. Anyway, let's proceed. Yeah, so this just basically gives you the thing. Now, again, in Los Angeles, there's Zone 1 and Zone 2. That's another complexity that we don't need. I lived in the San Fernando Valley, and boy, does it get hot there, because it doesn't have the cooling ocean breeze that comes off of Santa Monica and Venice and wafts over through to downtown. We have to cross a hill, like a small mountain range, to get to the valley, and so it really heats up there. So they give us a higher threshold in Zone 2. We can consume up to 500 kilowatt hours in Zone 2, and we'll still be in Tier 1. But if they live down in the cooler part of LA, then they have to stick to 350 kilowatt hours. Is that clear? Good, so let's forget about that and go on. In one chart. So this is incentivizing conservation and efficiency, and there it is. So now, is this a pointer here? Or? Oh, there it is. Yeah. So here we go. In this column, we've already seen this information here. So you're starting out at Tier 1, and by the way, for every year, 2015 all the way through 2020, everything is the same. The thresholds for entry into the next tier are always the same. They don't change. And the monthly allocation is higher for Zone 2, but like I say, forget about that. So again, here in this column, the monthly tiered fixed charge, this information we've already seen. In Tier 1, it starts out at 55, and it goes up to $2.30 by 2020. And if you're in Tier 3, it starts out at $6, and it becomes $22.70 by the time we get to 2020. Now, here's your summer and winter charges, but realize it doesn't make any difference in Tier 1, and it continues to not make any difference in Tier 1 all the way up into 2020. Doesn't make any difference in Tier 2 either. The only time it makes any difference is in Tier 3. The strong conservation signal is given to the big energy consumers. Raise the temperature on your thermostat in the middle of the summer so you don't keep your house freezing cold when it's 110 degrees out, because then you're going to pay through the nose on your bill. And so they're trying to train people to do that. But anyway, that's the system. These are the charges. 15 cents, just under 15 cents per kilowatt hour in Tier 1, just over 18 cents per kilowatt hour in Tier 2, and 23 cents per kilowatt hour in Tier 3. And those will change so that when we get to 2020, it's 16.4 cents per kilowatt hour. Now notice the difference. This is just under 15 cents. This is almost 16.5 cents here. So that the change in your rate in Tier 1 is not that much. So that if you can conserve, you're not going to notice a big difference in your utility bill over the 5-year period. Now, if you're in Tier 3, you're going to start out paying 23 cents, and if that level of consumption continues, then by the time you get up here to 2020, then you're paying 31 cents almost per kilowatt hour for your electricity. So the amount of change, the percentage of change, is higher for the higher consuming people. Does anybody need to like gaze at that for a while and absorb its wisdom, or because I needed to go over this quite a few times. So I want to make sure that everybody gets it. If you've got a question, please ask it. So I'm very conscious of the possibility of racing ahead to respect your time. And
had Tier 3 friends over my house. They be leaving lights on, water on, everything. I just have to kick them out of the house, right?
That's right. Hey, Don't you guys have to worry about your utility bill? What's wrong with you?
There you go, kick them out.
Or maybe some of Tim's teenage daughters could. But-
What's the KUB equivalent?
So we're, we don't have a summer or winter charge. Ours is 9.9 cents a kilowatt hour.
Okay, so even at the tier one's about half, it's 5 cents less.
We're 9.9 cents.
Right, so the rates are,
Is this delivery more, not so much about, an overall consumer saving money, it's more of promoting conservation?
yeah, because look, you know, right now, there are thousands of homes in New Mexico that are imminently threatened by wildfires that they can't control. The climate crisis hits the West way harder than it does here. We'll walk out of this meeting to a lovely balmy day and we'll go, climate crisis, well, you environmentalists, what the hell's your problem? But people in California know the problem. They've walked out of their houses and they've seen what looks like Armageddon. Air pollution so extreme from nearby fires that even if you're in San Francisco, which often has very clean air, it looks like one of those movies that, what was the sequel to Blade Runner, where almost every scene shows such shocking levels of air pollution that you can't see more than a block. I mean, that's the way it was. They've experienced that. So people in California kind of get the point that the situation is absolutely dire. And this is the second largest publicly owned utility in the country. And they are under big time pressure from state and local government and crazy environmentalists like me to really change and change fast. And as I get to the end of this, well, I think we're a couple of 3 slides away from the end, we'll talk about what the consequences of this have been. So anyway, I'm going to move on now unless somebody screams and says, wait, I don't understand. Okay, here we go. Tiered fixed charge coupled with increases in the energy rate by tier is equitable and balanced. That was the point, being equitable. A proportionally higher fixed charge to higher usage customers, low usage customers who may not benefit from or be able to afford customer-owned solar are not unduly impacted. They're impacted, but not quite so much. So the money that they'll spend on people with solar panels on their roof are largely coming from higher usage customers. LADWP's tiered fixed charge comprises a lower percentage of customers' monthly bills at lower usage levels than if a single fixed charge across all customers was used. LADWP's proposed balance of fixed charges and energy charges is competitive, but still provides an incentive for customer-installed generation. Like Mike said, they're trying to incentivize people to put solar panels on their roofs. And by the way, also do energy efficiency upgrades. So I got together with these guys, Dave Rahimian and George Chen. One of my friends, I actually have a pal on the board of LADWP. Susana Reyes is a high-ranking Sierra Club member on our national board. I worked with her when had further questions, as I think you already have shown you do, that Dave and George would talk to us again. Legislative and intergovernmental affairs basically means David Rahimian has to make sure that the rate structure complies with the law, state and local. And George sets them up and figures out how to actually bill people. So we discussed this rate case. And again, this was passed in 2015, and I was one of the people who helped advocate for it and also helped advocate for low-income residents to come and advocate for it. And so this was phased in over 5 years. They did it. Fixed fees and fixed charges. Let's see, is there anything else in the combined system provide for reliability, incentivizing conservation? We've gone over all that. Relieve burdens on low-income customers who can't afford rooftop solar. And I asked Dave and George 3 questions. I said, Dave, George, in 2015, LADWP set up a goal for a 15% reduction in electricity demand by 2020. Did they achieve that? And they said yes. In 2011, average residential energy consumption was 500 kilowatt hours. Now it's 410 kilowatt hours, which is approximately, I think, an 18% reduction over that 9-year period. Did the rate structure unduly impact poor people? In other words, did I lie to the low-income residents that I convinced to vote for this thing? And he said no. No increase in LIHEAP applications over the 6-year period that is under consideration. Finally, did the rate structure hold up over time? Have people come back in and say, hey, you've got to reverse, get us back to the way we were in 2015. You crooks, what have you done to us? But they said, no, it did hold up over time. Like I explained before, they have changed the amount of the rates a little bit, tweaked it, but the basic structure of tiered fixed fees and tiered rates is exactly the same. The rate structure takes care to assure recovery of fixed costs, and with an aggressive energy efficiency program, the variable income decreases. So what's the overall history of this? And by the way, this is the last slide. In 2002, they passed this RPS measure. A portion of the delivered electricity across the state has to come from renewables. They made their 2017 goal by 2010. They got 20% of their electricity by then. So they set a new goal of 33% by 2020. Now, they keep meeting these goals well ahead of time, so they're getting good at it. This is not just LA, this is across the state now. So late last year, LA City Council voted to have LADWP transition to 100% renewable energy by 2035. That's a tall order. And one of the things that they had to do in LA, one of the things, like I talked about the coal-fired power and how one of the big coal plants was in Utah, and they sent the energy down a 400-mile wire to LA. Now that plant up there was a giant polluter, and other polluters hooked their energy into that wire along the way. One of the polluters was called the Reed Gardner plant in Nevada, and its coal ash was dumped in the desert, and the wind blew it right onto the reservation of the Muwapa Band of Paiute Indians, who vigorously protested the shocking health impacts. And they got together with the Sierra Club. They closed that plant down and created a solar facility that hooks into that wire today. And so now solar comes to LA from this reservation. But they still have the facility in Utah, and as was explained to me by the lead engineer at the time, Mike, I can't remember Mike's last name, but he said it takes spinning iron in the IPP plant in Utah to push all the electricity down so they can pick up all the other renewable energy along the way. An engineer could better explain that. But if they were to replace the IPP plant with a bunch of solar panels, it wouldn't work. They need to have that mechanically turning armature in, and it's like it's as long as, not this room, as this whole facility here. It's absolutely, it's like a battleship in size. And so they want to keep that running because that 400-mile wire is a big investment by the ratepayers of LA, and they don't want to just like throw people's money away. So they're trying to figure out how to keep that iron spinning using all renewable energy. So they're converting, they'll be off coal by 2025. That means they won't burn any more coal up in that plant in Utah. And this was a complicated negotiation because LA is not the only customer. They had to get all the other people to agree to that as well. Well, they did. And so they will stop burning coal, but they're going to burn some natural gas up there. This is not renewable energy, but they've got now till 2035 by state law. So they will replace the natural gas at some point with what they call green hydrogen. They will somehow use electrolysis to create hydrogen out of water, and they'll burn the hydrogen to keep that thing spinning. And it will be at a lower capacity than it did under coal, but it will still pick up all the other sources of energy along the wire. So this is a utility that's really thinking about how to do this, because what they originally told us is impossible. The renewable energy, get out of my face. We can never do it because of this 400-mile wire, and they'd cost billions of dollars. You Sierra Club idiots, don't you understand? But now they're doing it. 100%. The decade earlier than LA's previous goal. Like I said, they keep beating their deadlines, and I believe now, this is even later than when I wrote this, I think they're going to do it. The LA has decided, the utility with them, they can do it by 2030. So we'll see how that works. The vote, this is important, and I want us to remember this. This vote followed the publication and dissemination of a study by the National Renewable Energy Laboratory and LADWP called LA 100, exploring the various means to get to this 100% renewable energy. They're not there today, but they are confident that with all the other deadlines they've beaten, they believe they can do it. And this isn't just a bunch of environmentally minded politicians. These are a bunch of engineers as well that say they can do it. I think we should study the report and figure out what that would mean for us. Because it's an example of somebody actually responding seriously to the climate crisis and say, we got to stop burning shit to provide our energy needs. So I know it says we'll explore. I think this was going to be my first slide, and I said, no, it works better later on. So we have explored the rate design that will help LA achieve the goal. So that's my presentation.
Thank you very much, Ken.
Sure.
What I'm going to do is move up here,
All right.
and I guess we can proceed in a couple of ways. I think first, I'd like to see if anybody has any, it was great we asked questions along the way, but any more specific questions about what Kent presented. And then I would like to, after if we have time, see how long that takes. Next thing would be to get into a series of questions that any of you may have about rates, period. We've been on them, quite a number of sessions. 7 sessions, and I mean, I think it's been incredibly valuable. I mean, I think when we came in and we started to talk, we don't know enough about rates, and I think we've learned a tremendous amount. So, but I want to structure that conversation to make sure I really have each of you, what any questions or concerns or comments you might have, one at a time, so that we make sure that we get everything out, and then and that will be to anybody who is in the room that can answer them. And we'll go that way. So does anybody have anything about what Kent presented? And I'll start with one. This is a 2015, 2020. It looks pretty impressive, and that is, one, is the public accepted this for the most part? I mean, are there any pushback by any people, organized or otherwise, that's consistent? And two, has anybody really done a real evaluation? I mean, this is a very creative approach, seems to me, and holistic approach to an awful lot about what the challenges are, both for keeping consumption down and also for transitioning to the energy production, to renewables. So, are you aware of what's the acceptance been by the general public on this overall? Has there been people out, we can't have this, or has it been pretty well, this is the way it is, and we adjust and go from there?
I would say that if people protested about this, I'd hear about it, because I'm in touch with the Watts Clean Air and Energy Group, Repower LA, part of the Los Angeles Alliance for a New Economy, Scope, Strategic Concepts in Organizing and Policy Education. It's a South LA organization. So I'll tell you this, The liberals aren't against it. The low-income residents aren't against it. The unions aren't against it. Now, there may be some people of a more conservative disposition in the wealthier neighborhoods that might be against it because they're getting socked by higher utility bills, but I haven't heard about it.
There's a little disincentive for anybody left with marijuana heat lamps in their basement.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah, yeah. But I think in LA now.
I think I saw a movie about that.
They can grow it in the
Hey, you
yard
gotta
in
get
LA, Bill, so.
You got to touch all the constituencies.
Yeah, that's right.
We can
No,
handle that.
I haven't heard about it, but what I could do is I could do some research and I could ask groups that I worked with, that I'm still in touch with, well, what about it? What about are people, marching around in front of LADWP like we did back in the day? And find out, because I don't totally know.
I think you would have heard about it where there are
I'm
large
pretty
numbers
sure I
of-
would have heard
of
about
groups
it. Yeah.
protesting. I guess I don't know if you know this either, but on that high end, are people still in, I guess they'd be those very large houses, with swimming pools
Yeah, right.
and everything. Are they just, we'll pay it, doesn't matter, we have enough money, the bill's $7,000, whatever it would be, it seems.
We have something in common with LA, and that
Yeah.
is we have actually pretty shocking wealth inequality in Knoxville, too. But when you're in LA, I mean, you're really shocked by it because they've got big chrome skyscrapers with homeless camps right at the base. And I mean, you really see shocking poverty and obscene wealth right there together. And of course, I mean, you've got the entertainment industry, which is a great wealth creator for almost everybody who lives there. I mean, there's a big acting and technical middle class in the entertainment business, like the guys that hold the microphones and record the sound, all those people have good middle class incomes. And if they want to have high square footage houses and high utility bills, then they could probably handle it pretty well.
Right.
But a lot of people want to have lower utility bills because they appreciate the other aspects of efficiency and conservation, like they love their grandchildren and stuff.
Okay, well, does anybody, and I guess I want to ask one more, and that is, has there been a global study, of all the impact on this, like the book? This is a big new thing, different approach, it appears to have been very successful for the goals that were set out, but, in terms of how many people are taken, because these are we're talking about very significant price cues here.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
there's nothing subtle about
That's
these,
right, that's exactly right, yeah.
And
The intent of the utility is clear, and with their messaging, they make sure everybody understands why the billing system is the way it is.
Right.
And it's nerdy and complex with the zones and the summer charge and all that. It's a lot to wrap your head around.
okay, well, let's see, any other questions let's go around and give everybody a chance to jump in if we can, but let's start, see.
Hey, so real quick question, when they proposed the tiered rate systems, do you happen to know if the first year they proposed it for this 15 to 16, was the goal just to get the income to the utility? Do you know anything about how they were hitting those numbers at first? Like, for instance, the utility had this certain level of income in 14 and going into 15, right? Was their goal in switching to the tiered system, maintaining that income for the next year, and then they'll see the increase in the rates over the 5 years?
To make it income neutral.
Yeah, that way they adopt the new system, and that way it doesn't have any impact on the income, or at least, does that make sense? Like, how they
I guess I don't totally
so
understand.
So do you know anything about how they arrived to the first tier numbers? Was it just to replace the income that on the old system that they had?
I think they evaluated the income that they would need, and they went, "Oh my God!" And then they said, "Okay, well, we're going to have to gradually move up to it." Now, as we've seen by Mark's presentations about rates and stuff here, that there's all kinds of things, bonds and stuff like that utilities can use to spend money now and then pay it back later. So the complexities of that are beyond me. You know, if we could get the Chief Financial Officer of LADWP in here, which it's not impossible, maybe we
I
could,
didn't expect
you
you
know.
to have this in your presentation, but since you've been around this so much,
Right.
I figured to ask.
Right. Well, I've been around it from an advocate's perspective. I've also seen representatives of the utilities come into a meeting room filled with low-income residents and just fall flat, present a whole bunch of nerdy numbers in ways that the residents just couldn't relate to. And so it's not easy for the utility to make its case, and I've seen them like muff the job. But we did have powerful advocacy organizations, not just the Sierra Club, but lots of different people. We had an ally in IBEW Local 18, which was the electricians union, and we had allies in the faith communities and in the Latino community, the Black community. A lot of people came in and worked together on it. And I think that was really helpful in getting it to happen because it anchored the pressure. It wasn't just pressure from Sacramento, which would have been deeply resented on some parts, but it was also local pressure that kind of dovetailed with that. And I think those things helped. I think your questions about, you know,
I mean, it's more of the financial
income,
side.
you know,
Yeah,
and
totally
level.
is.
Right,
It's totally cool.
right, yeah,
But thanks.
sure.
We also have questions specific to Kent's presentation.
If you happen to know how much they pay
DWP.
Yeah, do you know how much they pay for a kilowatt hour? Like
You mean
what the-
from your solar panels or something?
Well, I mean, no, so I know they said that KUB pays 9.9 to TVA for their, what you charge.
Yeah, that's
How
what the
much-
customer pays KUB. So there on the sheet that you've got right in front of you, you have
Well,
what
what their
customers,
cost is to buy it. Okay.
generate their own.
they're different, yeah.
Like we buy all of our power from TVA, they own their own generation plants. So it's a whole different situation. And what they were,
Because TVA charges you guys a certain amount, right?
that's right.
And then you resell it to us.
This is real
So-
rough, 80% of your bill is charged from TVA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we exist off the 20% part. But TVA is the one that generates it all, and TVA is the one that makes decisions about coal or solar or
Yep.
any of the kind of stuff
Right.
Kent's been
Yep,
talking
yep.
about. And LA and California in particular, you know, the state legislature said, you're gonna go solar,
Yep,
you're gonna go renewable. Then everybody was left with the decision about, okay, how are we gonna do that? In the case of LA, since they generated themselves, they had to make a decision of, okay, what do we close down?
Right.
How do we go about closing it down? How do we get more renewable? And part of their answer was to have higher rates that incented people to put solar on the roofs. And when they did that, then that helped them meet their state mandated goals. It's more complicated than what we have here.
Yeah.
yes, way more.
Way more
Yeah,
complicated.
yeah, no, you're absolutely,
Your point is still well taken.
Yeah.
What does it cost, what percentage of what they charge their customers does it cost them to generate?
Yes, that's
We don't have
right.
to generate ours, they generate theirs, but
Yeah.
their equivalent to what we pay TVA is what it costs them to generate.
yeah,
Yeah.
and what
And
they're,
clearly, it costs a lot more, otherwise their rates wouldn't be so much higher.
yeah, and also those higher rates are not just paying for the cost of getting the electricity,
Right.
but also the cost of the new generating resources that they have to build in. So
Right.
there was what is it, the Pine Valley Wind Farm, and they're out in Kern County, there's a huge a brownfield that they built this gigantic solar resource in, and also out in the desert. Actually, the Sierra Club advocated against creating a solar farm in the desert because it damaged certain wildlife, and we won that. They didn't build that one, they had to build it somewhere else. So the whole transition to clean energy is fraught with all kinds of conflict. We're basically, I mean, they're changing the energy basis of a really complex part of our society in a really short time. And so it's not easy to do, and a lot of people don't agree with it. So the politics involved in making that happen are difficult and complicated, just like the rate structure.
But it may be easier to incentivize customers by increasing, I mean, because their rates are a lot higher, so they're paying a lot more energy
Overall, the
than we
rates are-
are.
yeah, that's right.
Because the
Overall, the
TVA
rates
rate
are
is
higher.
so reasonable. I mean, if you were,
Service territory, TVA is going through the same sort of stuff. Not the same pace that California did, or was going through, but they're fixing to shut down the Bull Run steam plant, 15 miles from here.
Right.
Fixing to be shut down in a year or two.
Yeah, 2023.
They're also looking at shutting down Kingston, on Kingston coal plant, as you drive down 40. They're also looking at shutting down Cumberland steam plant, which is more in Middle Tennessee. And so I think maybe that's the last of their coal plants. But TVA is on a path to do the same thing as far as shutting down coal. They might not be transitioning to solar so much as quickly as they have in California. But they also don't have the state political landscape forcing change as
Yes,
much.
that's exactly right.
So they're doing it more based upon economics than what they did in the state of California, which is more a political willpower. Thou shalt, cost is not necessarily part of the equation. It was more, we have a political goal, environmental goal, sustainable goal.
Yeah, well, that's true, but cost is a factor in creating this, as we've seen, because you had also powerful forces in LA saying, don't mess with South LA, don't mess with East LA, and because those people are well organized and they show up. So you have an emphasis on minimizing the cost to the people who can afford it the least. And that's a political as well as an economic
But as
incentive.
far as the transition from one form of energy to another, it was more mandated that there
Yes.
be more renewables.
Those
as
mandate-
opposed
yeah.
to TVA's taking a more of approach about economics.
and has the cost of energy increased at all by having to shut down those coal plants?
I don't believe so, but up until recently, natural gas prices, which has replaced a lot of the TVA's coal plants, has been very low for a long, long time. I will say right now, that's not true.
That's correct, that's correct.
So you very well will see higher electricity prices going forward a little bit because of natural gas prices.
Yeah.
But that may or may not slow down TVA's plans. I don't think so, because they're kind of already in flight, getting rid of all the coal plants.
I think that-
TVA's on the same path, just not on the same pace.
Well, yeah, I think that general picture is right. The controversy that the Sierra Club and other environmental groups have with TVA is that they're using gas to replace coal.
Right.
And if you look at the methane emissions from where the gas is pulled out of the earth, and also the pipes and valves and meters and stuff that it has to go through, that from a climate perspective, a lot of studies say it's worse than coal. It's not worse than coal in terms of local air impacts, like the particulate matter, the mercury and the arsenic and all that, that is thrown into communities that are near coal plants. If they're near gas plants, the community impacts will be much less. But nonetheless, the climate impacts, they are perhaps by some studies, greater with gas than with coal. So those are the issues that have to be faced. Now, there's an economic issue that's more forward-looking than what Mike is suggesting, because California is paying for all those solar farms, paying for all those wind farms, and it's expensive, and those rates are covering that. But once that stuff is up and running, and it's been going on for a few years, then the amount that you have to pay for that electricity goes way down. I mean, the solar panels keep on producing. You don't have to buy coal or buy gas to keep those things running. So just like almost every aspect of clean energy, you got to pay a lot of money up front. If you want to get an electric car, it's more expensive than a gas-powered car. But after you've been driving it for 10 years, you've saved a ton of money. And pretty much the same thing is true with clean energy on the utility level. You got to pay to get it there, But once it's there, it can be maintained and used at far less cost. So California is also investing in a distributed system where the solar panels are all over the place, where other sources of energy, and I think they're talking about wave energy and geothermal and things like that, that are also zero emission, but don't have a large percentage of the energy mix yet.
You know, one of the things that we've done to help transition here is we've bought 502 megawatts
Yes.
worth of solar, which will cover, but have solar for 20% of everybody's consumption sitting in here in the room once they're all in service in a couple of years. So we've reached out ahead of TVA's curve of transitioning out their coal plants. We've moved ahead of that by purchasing solar ourselves over and apart from TVA's mix,
Yeah.
if you will.
No, and KUB really needs high commendation for that, because you use the opportunity of their imposing the 20-year contract. Say, oh, you want a 20-year contract, do you? Well, we're not going to comply unless we get what we want. Knoxville has greenhouse gas emission goals. So with the TVA proposed energy mix, Knoxville wouldn't make those goals. So these gentlemen got together with, you met also with Huntsville Electric and EPB in Chattanooga, is that right?
That was about the contract itself.
Yes.
But our purchase of solar was unique to us.
Yes, I know that, yeah. So, and that makes KUB a leader in the Southeast. No other metropolitan area in the Southeast will have as much renewable energy delivered to customers as KUB. It's about the same as the national average of the average utility delivery of renewable energy to customers is about 20% right now. And in the Southeast, it's way less. The Southeast is way behind many other areas of the country. But
So how
Knoxville,
does that rate compare to the other power purchases that you have?
In our case, TVA gave us a discount for signing a long-term contract, and we applied the discount they gave us to purchasing the solar, to making up the difference in having solar.
Neutral?
It was no cost to our customers.
That's right.
Because we just used the discount TVA was going to give us.
Part of it.
Part of the discount, that's right, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yes. So we were able to accomplish many customers' goals on sustainability without having to go and say, you need to pay us more. And TVA is the one that offered us the opportunity to do that. We were the ones, or our board were the ones that decided that was an appropriate use of that discount.
and that's not all you've done, because there's also the community solar installation that you broke ground on last week.
Last Friday.
And so the solar, and that's not the end of it, because you still have a 5% of the total capacity that you can generate with more solar.
That's correct.
That's correct.
Does anybody else have any specific questions for Kent on this project? Again, the next step, we'll want to talk more broadly, questions about rates, and obviously, we've only got 9 or 10 minutes left today, and I want to always respect people have schedules to end it appropriately at 4:30. Let me propose that the next, and we'll throw this open with a general proposal, that the next thing we do is have the discussion, and I'd like it more structured, as I said, where everybody really weighs in with any question they may have about rates to whoever it may be appropriate, Stephen or Kent, or obviously Mike, and everything that is represents both what KUB does and knowledge base that you've built up. Then we have to decide what we're doing next. And so we can have that, we can do both of those next time. You know, start with the discussion on rates and decide what the next topic, or we could, if it's real obvious, we could decide the next topic. Yeah, Mike?
So I have a general question.
Sure.
I can go for you, for Gabe, for the right reverend, Kathy. what is the end game here for the panel? And it's just me personally, I'm just asking for myself. I mean, did we sign up in perpetuity, in which case I should have really asked more questions?
There's a term of 3
It's a
years.
permanent position.
3 years.
Is there a term?
Yeah, 3 years.
Yes.
And how long is it?
3 years.
3 years.
3 years? Okay.
Yeah.
No good time discount.
I really should have. But what is the goal of this panel? Because from my perspective, we've talked a lot about rates, we've learned a lot about KUB inside and out and what we're doing, and that's been very informative. But there's been a lot of discussion about TVA. There's been a lot of, whether it be outwardly or Freudian slips about, well, we really want to make TVA do that. Great, but that's not what we do here. We can't, go to the board and force them to do anything. Obviously, we can ask, but at least one board member's been here at every meeting we've had, I believe. I haven't been to all the meetings, so I don't want to, step out there too far. What are we trying to accomplish, I guess is what, because we've been listening and the conversation has been great, but I feel like we're just going to get to a point where we're just regurgitating the same things over and over again. And I'm not asking for any of this group. I don't want to put them in this, paint them with this brush. This is just me asking for my purpose. And maybe I could have done it privately.
Would y'all like to,
Well,
Jerry, as
from the
board member,
board-
I have my thoughts, but I think you'd be.
Yeah, well, from the board's perspective, I think I can speak for my colleagues in saying every opportunity we have to hear from more people in the community about what we are doing and what we can be doing to make ourselves a better utility, that's what we want to do. That's one of the reasons why we were supportive of the mayor's, the compromise that grew out of what was going on, because we really do, let's face it, the way we run our meetings, and I'm not proposing that we change that, but the way we run our meetings, we have limited opportunities for input. This gives us an opportunity to have conversations where we can start to understand a little deeper and go deeper, and listening to you guys. But it really is kind of incumbent on y'all to ask questions and all, because we're mostly listening and trying to use that input to inform our decisions ultimately. The stuff I heard today, Kent, I listened to an hour-long presentation yesterday on the methane problem, and it's pretty compelling how damaging it is. It's not. I don't think. Well, there are some who say it's as bad as coal, but everybody says that it's bad, no matter whether it's worse than coal or not. So in our future, part of what I see our board doing, this is my last year, but is advocating with TVA to do certain things, if we agree with them. But I think it's just one more source of input. What I hope, well, if I were sitting in your seat, I wouldn't want to go over all this every 3 months. We start over and let's discuss rates again 6 months from now. But
That's not funny, Jerry.
Yeah, whether I've been here or whether I've been watching it on television, Mike, you're really awesome. But the presentations today, I'm sorry I was late, and for the last 2 meetings were very informative to me, and I think the board members are open to listening and learning. But I don't see any other purpose for this group,
Right.
other than letting the community have another voice to help inform the board.
Yeah, this panel was put together purposely, not necessarily to represent everybody in the community, to make sure major interests are represented. And I think Jerry referred to the city compromise, which was basically there was criticism of the board structure and other things, and basically it was based on the board not hearing enough from enough people, and that's sort of been an undercurrent. So right here, it's like, okay, there are lots of ways to look at rates, and we spent 7 sessions on them, both getting the base of where we are and the whole logic why the rates, not just electricity, but we've gone over the entire broad all 3 systems, and a full airing, and then of the variety of ways of looking at these. And I think the idea is not for this group to come up with a solution, and we said we weren't about to vote, but to make sure that the board was well aware of all of the perspectives that are out there, which is, that's reflected in our minutes, which are very thorough and reflect the broad range of what these perspectives are. They're also reflected in board members who have come, and there's always been a board member, and others have watched, or read the proceedings each month. So I think we had identified a number of topics. Clearly, rates was the big one. I mean, I don't think there's much doubt about that. But now we have this board that's probably as familiar with what KUB does as, I can't imagine there are many people in the community that could compete with the knowledge that we've all, and I'm throwing myself in here, accumulated, including obviously from Mike and from KUB on rates, but also from Stephen and today from the perspective and learning a lot about LA, which I thought was fascinating, and it shows a different approach. And very balanced consideration of all the things that impact. So I don't think I was a member of the PACE 10 board when in y'all's position, when the whole major decision of building all the facilities for wastewater and dealing with the EPA lawsuit and everything else and settlement was dealt with. That did end. I mean, I don't think this is looked at as going on, for lifetime appointment or anything. But I think we did have a few, and really we could go back to meeting every other month. We could decide to take a number of months off, or we could just kind of keep going and seeing what comes up. I think, we had alternative energy sources was one of the topics that received a lot of attention. We did broadband, we've done rates, we've done the overview. So I think it's really up to the panel to make sure we discuss things in a way that inform us and also provide any feedback a little more in a not a time-bound manner. Not, okay, I was city council meetings for 16 years, every 2 weeks, like 1,000 of them or something. There's not a lot of time like in public forum. That's not quite the same as what we have here. Yeah. So this is what this opportunity, and the same thing, you can't get that in a board meeting setting. And that's how I see this function, and I think I appreciate the patience of everybody who's come throughout, and that's why it's really up, in many ways, up to us where we want to go from here and what topics, or if we need to take on any more topics. Our thinking was, now with all the rates, that one more session, now that we've have heard so much, to say, does anybody on the panel, let's make sure any outstanding concerns or questions are not laying out there that need to be aired, and that board members need, and KUB leadership needs to be aware of. Anyway, that's the way I see our function.
I'll just put out there as a fellow panel member, it was personally encouraging that we had, one of the first things we talked about was broadband. Mm-hmm. And I feel like because we decided to have broadband being one of the first meetings, I feel like that helped encourage leadership to take even a faster role with it. But right. I mean, so far I feel like our voices have been heard and very fairly, I feel like it's useful. I think we're not going to see the benefit for a long time, but but it's your 3 years, man. It's whatever you want to make of it. Like, right?
Yeah, you're halfway.
Yeah. I would say that another set of eyes, we have a very good system administratively for getting feedback from customers, but there are only so many things that somebody will tell the bad guy if they think you're the bad guy. Yeah. So, but being able to hear from you guys, being our eyes and ears in a sense of hearing things we may not hear and bringing it to our attention. I'm particularly interested as broadband goes up. Yeah. What people hear about that.
Which, I mean, God, I really just wanted to say one policy thing. Just going to put it out there. While broadband is coming up in the next 6 to 7 years, and we're messing with rates right now, if we are interested in tiered fixed rate structures, let's put it this way, are we not going to do anything to address the climate change realities in the next 7 years. I think it's inevitable we're going to do something even more than 20% solar in the next 7 years to address climate change. So if that's the case, one possible idea could be introducing or at least ideating a tiered fixed rate system to allow customers to also offset their broadband costs, but just implement it all in a short amount of time so people have less change to deal with after these first few formative years. So it's just a thought from a policy making from the KUB leadership standpoint.
I like that, I think it's encouraging. But I would, notice one thing that in my presentation, it might be easy to forget, but at the beginning, one of the reasons for implementing that was that they were doing an aggressive energy efficiency
100%.
program.
Totally.
And I think that the two kind of go together. And I think we're in a unique opportunity now. We could dramatically increase the rate at which we do energy efficiency upgrades. And we've seen on charts that there's a small portion of low-income customers that have very high utility bills. And we could target them, if that's at all possible, and say, hey, let's get these guys first, because they're the ones who are in real trouble. But we got like infrastructure money coming in that's earmarked for just that kind of thing. And I'd like to hear, if somebody can do a presentation about it or something, what are the opportunities for that and what could we do to help that along so that we can bring more money in? And it's also a big job creator locally to do that. You can't send that thing to Singapore. You have to do that with local talent, and there are people here who need jobs. So that's something I'd love to talk about.
Well, do we want to start the next one with general rate questions, or do you think there's sense that that would be good, or are you kind of rated out right now on things? What's your...
Mike's laughing.
If that's a verb, I don't know.
No.
Nobody's gonna hurt my feelings.
Poor Mike.
Before we,
Yeah.
Ken, outstanding job.
Oh,
Yeah,
thank you. Thank you.
Seriously,
I mean, great information, outstanding job.
well presented.
Well, I appreciate that. I was worried because I experienced some confusion myself saying, oh, how am I going to get this across? But
I thought it was very clear. Very, very well done. And then maybe we do hear, maybe energy efficiency is, strategies to deal with. I don't know. I think we'll have to do some thinking of what we want to do next, because,
well,
I'm open to having a little bit of slack in the next meeting where we discuss next steps or.
that's not a bad idea. I don't mind that.
They're pretty
Along the
intense.
lines of what you said, Hasib, I think that one thing I'd like to talk about at some point, and this is a general thing that could have a lot of implications, but what could KUB do to actually set greenhouse gas or climate goals? We've got, scientists are pretty clear about what we have to do. And as we've talked about, like KUB doesn't generate the electricity, TVA does. But KUB successfully went to TVA and said, hey, give us more solar. So what else could we ask KUB to do? To do some arm twisting with TVA and say, give us more. It's not enough. Because I think that's one avenue of approach. And also, KUB worked with other metropolitan utilities. And so I know that there are several other metropolitan utilities who share these goals. And now I'm looking around, hey, the rural communities are interested in solar too. So maybe they could collaborate and go to TVA and push TVA along a little
Remember,
bit.
there are other actors in this too. I mean, the city of Knoxville has got emissions goals, and of
Yep.
course, utilities, obviously a significant part, but then you got an awful lot of other,
Oh, yeah.
elements too,
Yeah.
and I know, and so that's something.
So it's time.
Yeah.
So maybe via email circulate possible ideas for how the next meeting can go.
That'd be good.
That would be fine.
Yeah, I'd like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then we'll at least start with the rate questions, make sure everybody has that, and then we'll have whatever we get by email, and then we can decide.
Great.
Have a conversation at the next meeting and get our next steps.
Sweet.
Okay.
The next meeting is
June 2nd.
Tiki, I feel like you keep us honest with the date setting every meeting.
Well, the recruiter told me, Army, somebody said recruiter have some breaks, but that's why I keep asking to make sure.
That's good.
We're gonna have a meeting next month, I got it.
I,